Narratives of Space and Time in Unrest, How the World Became Heterotopic. Brea, Filmmaking in the Margins. This video essay will explore space and time in the film Unrest, employing the framework of Michel Foucault's conception of heterotopias and Alison Kafer's notion of crypt time. But first, to introduce the film and the filmmaker, Brea. Filmmaking in the Margins. Unrest is a feature-length documentary about the experience of living with myalgic encephalomyelitis and about the development of the patient advocacy and civil unrest movement #MeAction. The film is directed, co-starring and co-written by Brea, who at the time of release was an ME patient, self-proclaimed PhD dropout, independent documentarian, patient advocate and global activist. The film's creation, distribution and promotion were and remain an act of activism and patient advocacy, with the clear goal of increasing awareness of the lived experience and challenges faced by those with ME and galvanizing support in the public and political spheres for the patient advocacy movement #MeAction. According to MeAction, ME, or chronic fatigue, as some still know it, is a complex chronic disease that presents with symptoms in multiple body systems. ME is a neurological disease according to the World Health Organization. Brea herself, an ME patient, began by filming her own experiences of her then mystery illness. Later, when she found a community of people all around the world also suffering with this condition, neglected by modern Western medicine, she began creating the documentary from her bed. In turn, she created a film about living in the margins from that same marginalized position, using innovative remote filmmaking techniques that allowed her to connect with participants around the globe while she was still sick in bed. These remote filming techniques have become more common since COVID-19, as most of the world adjusted to living in constrained conditions. As a sick and disabled artist and researcher, I believe there is a lot to learn from those already living in the margins, as living and creating from constrained positions leads to continual innovation and problem solving. Before we get into the analysis, here is the Unrest trailer.
From as early as I can remember, I wanted to swallow the world whole. Anything was possible. I just thought I would have more time.
I don't know what I did to myself. I don't think I can get up off the couch. I feel like my brain is misfiring.
Sometimes I wouldn't be able to speak.
Wow.
If you say too little, they can't help you. And if you say too much, they think you're a mental patient.
The doctor would tell me, "You're just dehydrated." Everyone gets stressed. Then I went online and found thousands of other people just like me.
Yeah, I'm completely bedridden.
It's just like I'm just watching my life disappear.
I have ME, CFS, that's chronic fatigue syndrome.
Historically, you can see illnesses very similar to this called many different things.
Saw someone collecting the other day for ME. That's the one where don't feel like going to work today.
It's gonna pass.
Okay.
Chronic fatigue syndrome. Yeah, I'm tired too.
When medicine has no answers for you, where do you turn?
Oh my God.
It's like the craziest high school science experiment you've ever done.
Just because it's crazy doesn't mean it's wrong.
You're looking at this camera.
I started filming more and more people all over the world from my bed.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
You know what it is about being observed? It's that people feel sorry for me.
Baby, I'm so sorry.
I have the strength of a mountain, and I've got the
We're kind of both organizing a day of protest as well as organizing individual protests.
And the stars, they burn bright.
All of those things, those really simple things.
There's the sun.
That life was gone, but here I have this new one.
And I'll take all you throw at me.
And I have to fight for it.
This commentary will explore Unrest's use of time and space, employing the framework of Michel Foucault's conception of heterotopias and Alison Kafer's crypt time. Foucault lays out 6 principles for heterotopias in his essay Of Other Spaces, Utopias and Heterotopias. In short, heterotopias are essentially non-place places that sit outside of usual time or societal rules. Therefore, they are often otherworldly worlds within our own society, which can both reflect those societies or disrupt them. It is this radical potential and the segregation of the inhabitants of these heterotopias which makes this framework highly instructive when critically examining the aims of Unrest. Many of the spaces represented in Unrest can be read as heterotopias, such as the various spaces that ME/CSF patients inhabit, their beds, tents, sofas, health institutions, online spaces, public protests by proxy of their shoes, government spaces by proxy of their allies, and so on. Although Foucault states that heterotopias are polysemic, with no universal definition, he offers 2 loose categories. Firstly, crisis heterotopias, reserved for people in crisis according to the rules of their society. Secondly, heterotopias of deviation, places where those considered to deviate from societal norms reside. The bedbound or homebound ME/CSF patient in Unrest arguably inhabits a heterotopic space on the borderline between crisis and deviation. These heterotopic spaces of the film, in which individuals are isolated and create whole virtual worlds through their mobiles and computer screens, offers an uncanny foreshadowing of the heterotopic space of shielding or lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, for many, this was only a temporary crisis heterotopia legitimated by society. When a person first becomes sick, the space they inhabit becomes a heterotopia of crisis, a space temporarily outside of societal expectations, time restraints, and rules. As seen in the conception of the sick role by sociologist Talcott Parsons, who states that society allows the sick a temporary deviation in order to get better, but this for Parsons is strictly a temporary state, similar to that of the COVID-19 lockdowns. However, for the ME/CSF patient, whose sickness is chronic, these spaces of crisis, outside of and hidden from society, whilst within it, become permanent, shifting to heterotopias of deviation, as their state of being no longer fits capitalist society's expectations of productivity and normative time. In one sequence, the film presents the stark difference between the normative public space of the doctor's office and the personal heterotopic space of the sick, which is reflected in both its camera choices and style. Beginning with the space of the clinical encounter, Brea implements a highly orthodox 2 locked-off camera setup commonplace in interviews that allows for the switching between the doctor and herself and husband as she receives her ME/CSF diagnosis. Following this is a montage in Brea's bedroom, in which time becomes uncertain and ambivalent. The perspective of the viewer in this sequence oscillates between that of the voyeur watching Brea in her heterotopic space to inhabiting Brea's own point of view as the sick person who occupies her bed indefinitely, experiencing time in a slow and elongated manner. We watch a ladybird crawl along the bedsheet. We watch the ceiling fan spin. We watch out of the window and the seasons are shown to change. We watch the shadow of the window blinds move across the floor. These shots are filmed handheld with unorthodox framing and orientation. Objects often half in shot, seen from a variety of angles. We see Brea in her bed in various positions, her face filling the frame as the viewer is uncomfortably close to her in moments of vulnerability. And then, further away, her bed fills the frame and we are left with the impression that this space has become her entire world, existing in a time which is indefinable and undifferentiated. Sound is also used in this montage to collapse time through the mixing of Brea's diegetic speech, followed by retrospective voiceover commentary, which exemplifies her changing relationship to temporality and her place in society. I had no idea if it would be months or years or decades. It was like I had died, but was forced to watch as the world moved on.
Or decades. It was like I had died, but was forced to watch as the world moved on.
For Foucault, the heterotopia begins to function at full capacity when men arrive at a sort of absolute break with their traditional time. Brea states that she feels like she's experiencing a death within life. As such, this sequence presents a highly heterotopic space, as death is the ultimate break with time. Alison Kafer's notion of crypt time states that crypt time is flex time, not just expanded but exploded. It requires reimagining our notions of what can and should happen in time, or recognizing how expectations of how long things take are based on very particular minds and bodies. As such, it could be argued that anyone who identifies with the cryptine notion of time can be said to be inhabiting a heterotopic space. I would equally proffer that the heterotopic space of the ME patients of the film, whilst experiencing something akin to a living death, also begin to employ crypt time, which is time created around and for sick and disabled bodies, which challenges normative and normalizing expectations of pace and scheduling. For example, when Brea and fellow ME sufferer Jessica speak via video call from their respective bed, Brea, referring to their interview schedule, which is not set by normative temporality but rather a crypt temporality, says, "Even if we have to do it 10 minutes at a time, over like many days, we'll get there." As well as encapsulating the filmmaker's approach to production, this statement could be seen to represent Unrest's overarching goal, that even in increments, systemic change will be made by and for ME CSF patients and the chronically ill.